Hello everyone and welcome back to another Voyager's Guide to Ravean world building video. This time we're getting kind of out of the Pantheon, finally, and moving on into kind of actual parts of the world. And so we'll start this one and go farther in with other sections of the world with the different nations. But we're going to go over the rough adjustment of nations within Ravean. Across the globe, there are various groups of people that have united under one or banner or another, many of these falling into national groups, while others have this kind of maintained tribalistic tradition. They've remained closer to this tradition in smaller groups. But either way, these groups do dot the landscape of the world and make up this kind of colorful threads within the tapestry, as I have within my Ravian guide. Within the world, there are at least these five major nations that have laid claim to the vast majority of the available territory. These citizens of all of these overarching nations live in what is, at this point, at the start of the campaign, a relative peace with no overt conflict. On the forefront for people, there is, however, a little bit of an underground effort, a tenuous peace, some more, espionage, spies, intrigue that is going on, but no overt war. So that's kind of the rough adjustment. Now I'll show you the map that I have here and go from this one. Let me try to get it where I can. If I can eventually get it to expand a little better. It'll be all right. But right here, we have the Horsehead Peninsula. This is where we ended up starting out our campaign. This is the Remont Empire. And so if I expand this quite a little bit more, this is probably the first nation that we'll actually cover. The Remont Empire is a vast majority. I have it kind of colored out a little bit better to delineate the various territories, but it's made up of these also five major regions, with the very center being this massive grassland region, this southern, more gray area down here being kind of a sea swamp. Then off to the west, kind of a temperate jungle leading into more of a tropical jungle, and then dry scrubland. And then as you go further and further north, you get into the cold mountain range, that's up by this town of Silver Breach and the Little Watch and all of these other structures. And then, leading on farther north, there's this no man's land tundra that just isn't advantageous for people to try to maintain. But then following along this wide, long sea, this thin, long sea here, it's called the Ice Cut Sea. And then down to the easternmost part of the Remont Empire is the kind of Delta region, I believe is what I ended up deciding it would be called. It has a wide variety of rivers springing from magical and non-magical sources that end up kind of crossing the landscape. And then we'll probably, as a secondary nation that we'll cover, is the Mistkeep, which is kind of a mining guild. In the campaign, it's the Mistkeep Mining Guild. And then move our way along kind of clockwise around the map to the Libet Empire, which is the other very, very large territory within the world. And then further south to the Serac Wastes, where one of our party is from for the kind of sultanate that's there. It's a rough sultanate that changes over and has been in some recent turmoil. And then further to the south, below the Remont Empire, is the Doke Kingdom. This is a relatively new player on the world stage that is a little bit more of a jungle versus the Remont Empire, which makes up quite a bit, but it's a little bit more temperate. And then deserts of the Serac Waste and scrubland, grassland type area for the Libet Empire. And then some more geoactive and then cold mountains within the Mistkeep. Uh, they all are relatively surrounded by or separated by, split by this Sapphire Seas. The Sapphire Seas in and of itself is this one interconnected thin ocean that's almost like cracks in pavement. It's has the northernmost region, which is the ice cut, full of various icebergs and glaciers that make it very difficult for trade, and a little bit more challenging for people to traverse, given that they'd have to board an icebreaker ship that has a reinforced hull to be able to plow its way through the various ice flows. And then another split up north to between the Mistkeep and the Lebet Empire. This one is a little bit warmer of a sea, but still fairly cold compared to the more tropical areas around, kind of in between the Remont Empire and the Serac Wastes and the Doke Kingdom. This is the major part of the ocean that's a little bit warmer. But given that it's a little bit warmer and a little bit more conducive to life, it's a little bit more treacherous in terms of additional life forms. There's a lot of larger Leviathan creatures that make travel and trade a little bit more challenging. So you have to kind of skirt your way around their known territories and adjust and deal along those lines. Uh, the Sapphire Seas does loop all the way down and then back up around the Serac Waste. So it's a very interconnected sea with a variety of inland seas and lakes, almost like the Great Lakes in the U.S. or other inland seas. We have the Wellock Sea, the Icedale Sea, the Tanglebark Sea. These three are within the Horsehead Peninsula, and end up kind of being a part of the territory for the Remont Empire. We'll go into more depth with them in the future. And then there's the Mudlock Sea down to the south of the Doke Kingdom, and the Blackwater Sea as the inland seas of this region, as well as the Gemlock Sea and the Lebet Empire. These are all separate units, but they are notable kind of trade resource routes, because they are large enough that you can put a ship on, but they do not necessarily connect unless you have a very large river system, like in the Delta region, to the Sapphire Seas as almost a rule. There is a variety of different trade efforts that go through, and we have a player within the campaign so far, Serenity, that is actually from the Mistkeep Mining Guild, up near Rustwick, in one of these kind of quote unquote suburbs of this major city, that her family has ties to the trading business and boarded and worked on these ice cracker ships to make trade routes through the region. So we'll end up covering a variety of the different nations, starting with the Remont Empire, and then moving on to the Mistkeep Mining Guild, the Lebet Empire, the Serac Wastes, and then finally the Doke Kingdom, and going through all of the different individual structures as we go through our episodes. So keep you tuned for those kinds of things. The last thing that I will make a mention of is we started our campaign within the Timber Falls region, within the city of Timber Falls. It's a little bit more of an interesting journey so far, because they've headed north all the way up to Fallfield, and then they got a job and have explored up into kind of this off-road wildlands area, and then across all the way. And at this point, as of recording this, my party is in the city of Moonshade. So we'll see where they head to next, but it'll be kind of an interesting exploration to have them explore this map. Uh, One of my notes that I should make a mention of as well before I end this video now is I'm using a hex system. We have all of the different hexes within the world. Uh, each one of these is 3 miles, so it isn't actually all that big of a world. There's quite a bit of the world that can be traversed. This is only, what, 100-ish miles across. A major ship can cover that journey, and from Sea Crust to maybe Shadeside in maybe a couple days. It would depend based on the weather. So a lot of the travel along the sea is tending to be focused on the various skirting of territory for dangerous creatures and civilizations and raiding and everything else along those lines. So it's very quick to cover ground within the world of Ravean. You can get through a lot and get across a lot of places, but that does leave you fairly limited in terms of what you start out running into. Uh, you've heard the adage that it's a small world. Uh, you're going to run into people that you've seen before fairly often, especially if they're attempting to live within the same sort of a region, like the Ramont Empire, versus leaving and moving to the Lebet Empire or the Serac Wastes. You'll have characters that recur fairly frequently, and it'll be very easy to be effective on a international scale within this world setting. So I appreciate you sticking so far throughout this video. We'll kind of cover the Ramont Empire in the next video and all of its individual pieces. But thank you all for watching. Remember, it doesn't take much to make a difference out there, so be the difference that you want to see in the world. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye.